was really interesting because I would try to talk to them as much as I could, and I found that everyone criticized the practicality of everyone else. So the solar guys hate the wind guys hate the solar guys, the manure guys hate the algae guys hate the manure guys, and everyone claims that they're practical and everyone else is impractical. And what I noticed is they're pretty good when they're criticizing others, just they leave out a lot of facts when they have their own. But they all had, each one, I went through, I must have seen 20 PowerPoint presentations, and if you watch each one in isolation, you'd think, wow, this is the next Edison we got here. We'll see.
What's your recommendation to your common everyday individual for a change? Like from now on, from this point, I can't get this emphasis going.
Well,
You just carry out.
yeah, no, it's a really good question. It depends on how involved someone wants to be. I mean, I'd say at minimum, try to understand energy and try to factor that, speak out. I mean, I think in general, when you want something to change, you need to speak out insofar as you have the abilities and the time and the interest to do so, and then that implies an obligation to become more educated about the issues. And so then there's a question of, well, what to educate yourself about, and part of it is definitely just the facts about fossil fuels and standard of living, the global warming movement. But more broadly, it's a real understanding of capitalism and individual rights and what those really mean. And then even more broadly than that, it's understanding what kind of philosophy, what kind of basic ideas in a culture lead people to embrace capitalism, and what kinds of ideas cause people to reject it. What basic premises. So if someone holds the idea that, for instance, the good in life, what's good in life is to sacrifice for a higher cause, they're going to tend to have a negative orientation toward capitalism because that is a system of profit for self-interest. Now, it's self-interest where you're not hurting others, you're trading with them, but nevertheless, it's a self-focused system. So our society has a major premise, what Ayn Rand would call an altruist premise, that you should live for others or some higher cause, and that definitely leads to suspicion of and attacks on capitalism. So it's like peeling an onion. You see that, well, people don't understand this thing about oil. But it's not that Al Gore didn't read the oil brochure. It's that Al Gore has a certain kind of view of the whole system in which oil emerged that really makes him not like it very much. And then you think, well, why is Al Gore against that whole system? And then it's, well, Al Gore has a certain kind of view of what's really right and what's the right way to live. And it's, in his case, it's both religiously informed and informed by kind of a modern Harvard collectivist education. And you can see that his moral beliefs really warp how he views these factual issues. So, the two resources I recommend in terms of understanding the broadest issues are Atlas Shrugged and For the New Intellectual. And you can always email me if you have any. I think I included it on the handout. If you have any particular questions about resources, but the fundamental is get educated, speak, and then also, depending on what you do and what your resources are, support those who speak. So I work for a nonprofit. We're completely supported by charitable contributions, and I think of my job as people who don't have the time or resources or whatever to do what I do, but they want someone to do it, they pay me. So in the same way they pay their plumber to fix their house, they pay me to fix their energy supply. So hopefully it's well spent. Yes, let's make this the last question because I'm holding you guys a lot of time.
One of the big arguments you had for industrial capitalism was that it speeds up the rate of innovation, maybe as fast as it could be. So let's say that that's true, given that, are you opposed to lobby groups associated with powerful oil companies because those are dominant energy source, to the extent that those lobby groups prevent innovative new technologies that are associated with a different energy source from gaining momentum?
Well, yes and no. I mean, you could flip the question and say, am I opposed to green energy groups who are anti-oil in their lobby? Yes. You're pointing to a problematic feature of our system, but I think we need to go one level deeper to see what that is. So I have a problem with a system in which lobbying is a means of gaining wealth and or gaining freedom. I don't believe that your freedom, you should have to pay for your freedom, and I don't think you should be able to buy anyone else as well. So the dynamic, we have an economy, unfortunately, that's run by a government on the premise that the government has a right to decide how trade should be conducted. So it's not just between me and the oil company or me and the alternative energy company. It gets to dictate, let's say 30 years ago, Carter embarks on a major venture to promote solar, another major venture to replace oil, the Synfuels Corporation it was called. Those are all completely illegitimate there because they all amount to forcibly preventing someone from acting on his free judgment or forcibly transferring one person's wealth to another. And what happens is because we have so much of this coercive intervention in voluntary trade, which is called the mixed economy, so it's neither pure voluntary trade nor pure socialism, because we have this mixture, to the extent you have the government in there, more and more of a company's success depends not on how well he can appeal to the self-interest of others in the market, but how well he can convince the government to manipulate it in his favor. So there's no question at all that all of these people have all kinds of lobbyists and there's all kinds of corruption. But to put it succinctly, I like the phrase, I didn't make this up, but to take money out of politics, take politics out of money. That's the real fundamental, and but it is a very problematic system, and I don't know, and I'm sure that oil companies have done, bad things, but the fundamental reason all companies have to get into it is self-protection, because if you don't get into it, you get in big trouble. And one example of this, there's parallel in real life and in the book Atlas Shrugged. In the book Atlas Shrugged, there's a genius businessman who invents a new form of metal, and they tell him you have to have a man in Washington, you have to have a man in Washington. He says, I don't care about that. I just want to make the best metal, and people will buy my metal, and that'll be it. And what happened was he didn't have a man in Washington. They eventually nationalized his metal. And with Bill Gates, what happened was he used to have no man in Washington at all. He just said, I'm going to produce it, and I'm going to dominate the market. People are going to choose to buy my product. I'm not holding a gun to their head, but it's beneficial to them. And it's also beneficial to them that everyone else uses it, because then everyone's stuff can be compatible. So that was his mentality, and then he was stuck in court for over 10 years. Guess how many lobbyists Microsoft has now? They're one of the, I don't know the number, but hundreds, and they're one of the major lobbying groups in Congress, and they do a lot of really stuff that I think is abominable, including, this raises a whole can of worms, but net neutrality. But the point is that they have gone from someone who just wanted to be left alone to someone who is now hurting others. And you see when Google tries to merge with DoubleClick, Microsoft goes in and they try to get the government to stop it. And when Microsoft tries to join forces with Yahoo, Google comes in and tries to get them to stop it. So we have such a massive amount of government intervention. The only way is to enforce the principle that all trade should be voluntary, and you have no right to prevent two other people from transacting as they choose. So on that note, thank you very much. And